All right, today we have a workout to rehabilitate the toes, arches, ankles, and lower legs, as well as working a little bit with the core. So we'll start simply with the big toes touching, heels apart about 6 inches or so. Stand up tall, draw the shoulders back, take a few big breaths. When you're ready, inhale. Lift the heels off the floor slightly, trying to keep the ankles straight. Exhale, bring it down to the floor and pause. Inhale, heels up off the ground. Focusing on balance, focusing on the ankles straight, trying to hold it up the top for a moment. Exhale, bring it down. We want to make sure that the big toe mount, the base of the big toe, is not popping off. Inhale, lifting up. Exhale, lower down. You can find your own pace, your own speed, but we are trying to go as slow as possible and in control. Even trying to lift the pinky off the ground a little bit as you elevate to avoid the big toe popping off. We're gonna come down on the next one and we're gonna open our stance just 1 inch to each side. So now there's about 2 or 3 inches in between the toes. Make sure you're turning internal rotation of the feet. Heels wider than the pinky. Again, standing up tall, looking straight forward into the horizon or just a few inches below. Inhale, lift up. Work those ankles straight. Exhale, lower down. Inhale, come up. Exhale, lower down. As long as you can do this without falling off your stance too often, then there's no need for a wall. If you feel that you're struggling to do more than 2 or 3 reps without your feet falling off the position, then yes, then we want to maybe have a couple fingers on a wall to make sure that we can remain on the reps. Let's go ahead and open another inch or 2 inches, maybe 3 inches to the side, and we're still working with the big toe crushing down completely on the ground the whole time, on the way up, on the way down. No wobbling of the ankle. Inhaling up, exhaling down, noticing the muscles that work on the contraction that elevate the heels. In this case, those are the calf muscles, gastroc and soleus. And we're also working our outer shin muscles to keep those ankles stable. Let's go again, a little wider still. Inhale, rise. Exhale, lower. Okay, last one. This should be either as wide as your mat or maybe even past the edges of the mat. We're gonna go up slowly on the inhale, down slowly on the exhale. Just a couple more times. Last one here. Okay, shake that off. Let's go right foot forward, left foot back. And we want to make sure that the legs are slightly turned in. So the heels again are slightly wider than the pinky toes, both front foot and back foot. We're gonna start with both heels on the ground, square the hips, square the torso, stand up tall, inhale, both heels come off the ground. Exhale, both heels come back into the ground. And just find your own pace. We go for reps, but we're going slowly. If your stance is too long, you can always shorten a little bit. If it's feeling too easy, then you can lengthen it. We want to make sure that the feet are in line with the hips and not much wider, looking for too much balance, but also not too tight, like on a tightrope. Otherwise, it'll be too challenging. One more time, heels lifting, same idea, right? Big toe stays down, both ankles are straight. Look what happens if you start to feel that your heel on the back is starting to land in towards the midline of your body, then you gotta kick it out a little bit, slide it out a little bit. Let's go one more time up and down. Step forward with the left foot and step back with the right foot. Same length, same width. Take the time, make sure your knees are micro bent. They're not locked. We're not sinking into them. Micro bent. Start with both heels on the ground. Square the hips, torso, head on the horizon. And rise up. Both heels are coming up. Both heels all the way down to the floor. Inhale up. Exhale down. And of course, as you do the workout more and more, you can start to challenge your stance and draw your foot a little farther away from each other. Inhaling up, exhaling down. Last one here. And we're gonna step forward with the right foot, shake that off. Let's move into the floor. Sit with the legs straight forward. The knees could be bent or they could be straight. It won't make too much of a difference as we start. So really your choice. We're gonna start with very simple dorsiflexion, plantar flexion. Toes pointing towards the knees, toes pointing away from the knees. Flexing and extending. We're gonna add on to this. When we flex and draw the toes towards the knees, we try to spread the toes, just the same way that you would spread your palms big, separating the fingers, separating the toes. When you point away from the knees, try to grip a little bit and be gentle at the beginning. We're not trying to pull anything or rush the process. It's just a matter of slow, mindful repetitions, becoming attuned, aware, working on this neuromuscular connection, right? Sending the signals, sending the intention, spread, 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 point, 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 grip, 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 flex, flex. We're working with groups of muscles. So sometimes if we move too fast, we're gonna start to skip some of those muscles, rely on some muscles more and ignore others. So it's nice to really take the time and try to access more of your musculature. Okay, last one here. Next, we're gonna do pronation and supination. So when the big toes come towards each other and the big toe is closer to your knees than your pinkies, we're gonna call that supination. When we open on the opposite direction and now the toes are away from each other, the pinkies are closer to your knees than your big toes, that is pronation. You can use your hands as well if you want to the sides to support your torso. Just make yourself comfortable and keep the main focus on your feet. So we're gonna pronate. We're using the pronators, the lateral pronators, brevis, and supinators. Yep. Working the outer shin muscles on the pronation, working the inner shin muscles on the supination. We're gonna add now as we pronate, as we pull the pinky towards the knees and the big toe away from the knees, we're gonna spread the toes like we were doing earlier. Spread, spread, spread. When we supinate, we're gonna grip. Grip on the supination, spread on the pronation. Grip when your big toe is closer than the pinky, spread when the pinky is closer than the big toe. The whole time we're doing this, we're doing it with dorsiflexion, right? We're not doing this on a pointy position. We're first flexing, engaging the front shin muscle, the anterior tibialis, and then going through the motion, okay? All right, let's shake that off. And let's come back up to standing. We're gonna go back to lifting the heels. This time we're gonna add a little piece to it. So first, feet hip width apart, the heels slightly wider than the pinky. And now that we work with this pronation and supination, you can do a few times, a few reps of rolling the ankle in, rolling the ankle out. Pronation, supination, big toe down, pinky toe. From there, we're gonna root the feet. We're gonna inhale, lift the heels up just like we did earlier. Big toe stays down. Come up, come up, come up. On the exhale, we're going to slowly lower the heels and then lift the toes. Not the base of the toes, just lift the toes and spread them wide, spread them wide. Work on that pinky, getting away from the ring finger of the toe. Toes down. They stay down, all 10 toes down as we lift the heels up. And then slowly down. Lift the toes, spread them wide. Keep accessing more fibers. Toes down. Inhale. Exhale as the heels come down. Toes up, inhale. Spread, spread, spread. Exhale as the toes come down. Inhale, heels up. While we're working on this exercise, we want to have some mindfulness of what's happening with our hips and our back. So to protect the back, what we're going to do here is hinge the hips back, load up a little bit more of the glutes and hamstrings, check the toes are in, the heels are out, and if necessary, do a little bit of tucking of the tailbone. Inhale, lifting up. Keep the ankle straight. Exhale, lower down. Lift the toes. Okay, last one. All right, shake that off. And we'll go back on the ground. This time, face up on our backs. And we're gonna work with tuck and tilts, pin, unpin, core activation, transverse abdominals. So head on the ground, hips on the ground. First, just tuck and tilt. So when we arching the back and making a little bridge, we're gonna call that tilt. And tucking the tailbone, it's gonna mean pressing the lumbar spine to the ground and closing the bridge. No more space here whatsoever. The more you can press, the better. The more tension you should feel on those hip flexors. Inhale, arch, the hip flexors lengthen, the spine extends. Exhale, tuck, hip flexors engage, lower abdominals engage, flexing the spine to the ground. Inhale, arching. Exhale, rounding, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze.
On the exhales, we're engaging the front core muscles. On the inhale, we're engaging the posterior core, the lumbar extensors. Okay, so we're gonna tuck and hold the tuck, keep the tuck, and work on the next section here of the lower middle spine. We're gonna work on the lower front ribs here, simply exhaling and pushing those ribs down. They're going down and in towards the belly button, contracting the transverse, obliques, and rectus. Everything pulling that. On the inhale, relax and let the ribs spread away from each other. You can use your fingers. You can kind of claw your fingers into that ridge of the floating ribs, and exhale, pull them down. Actually, they'll be right above the floating ribs on that medial side of the connection of the cartilage that connects the ribs to the side. Either way, inhale, expand the rib cage. The whole time we're still tucking here. We're not using our pelvis at all. Exhale, draw those ribs in and down towards each other. Clearing, clearing, clearing. Now, inhale. You'll notice not as acute as in the other movement with the tuck and tilts, but there's a sense of middle spine vertebrae lifting as we inhale, and then crushing those vertebrae down to the ground on the exhale, just like we did with the tuck. So when we're tucking and pinning, maximum contraction of the abdominal quartet. All abdominals contracting, as well as hip flexors here, psoas and iliacus. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is take a big inhale, take a big exhale. So we're gonna tuck the tailbone, pin the ribs, hold that, and just lift the heels off the ground and breathe. So now we're adding some leverage, some weight, some tension to this position. We're working on crushing the vertebrae down. If you feel a little bit of a lift off, that's okay. If you're getting a lot of an arch here, then we're missing the point, right? We don't want to have this arch here and hyperextend and compress the spine. We want to stabilize the spine by tucking and pinning. And if that's too much, you can keep the feet on the floor and just play with taking a little bit of weight. More than taking the feet off the ground, what we really want is this contraction on the abdominal side. Okay, so now let your feet be heavy. Take a couple recovery breaths. We're gonna do the same thing, but this time instead of lifting the heels, we're gonna lift the head. The key here is first we wanna lengthen the neck by tucking the chin in, and then we wanna lift the head just enough that we take weight off it. We don't wanna lift the weight all the way up here like we're doing a crunch, because then we're shortening the front neck flexors. We want to keep the front neck flexors long under tension, not looking back again, then we're missing the point. We're hyperextending here and creating compression. We're tucking the chin and keeping the head just barely off the ground. Tuck, pin, and tuck the chin. Big breaths here. You could turn your head to the right and turn your head to the left, as long as one, the chin stays effort towards the chest, and two, the head is not coming up too high. Okay, let's come back to center and relax the head. Couple recovery breaths here. We're gonna do the same thing just one more time, first with the feet and then with the head. So tuck, pin, strong core, feet coming off the ground just a little bit. We don't need them up here. That actually makes it easier. When I keep it just hovering, floating off the ground, barely even noticing that the feet are coming off the ground. If you need to keep a little bit of weight on them to keep the spine fully in the ground, that's okay. As long as the tension is heavily felt on the front, we're good. We're on the exercise. As long as there's no pain on the low back, no torquing, no pinching. We're safe. So just breathe in here. Notice how we're tucking, we're pinning, but the diaphragm, our respiratory muscle, is free floating. I'm not locking my breath and locking the diaphragm. I'm able to squeeze, still take some big breaths. The heels are off the ground still. We're engaging the core. Tuck and pin, tuck and pin, tuck and pin. Big breath. And then feet on the ground. Recovery breath. Last side here. Tuck, pin. Head off the ground. Head off the ground. Chin in. Tuck, pin. Tuck the chin in. Breath. Notice what happens with the shoulders. Try to throw them back. Squeezing the shoulder blades, but tucking the chin in. Keeping the head close to the ground. Maybe rotating side to side. Head stays low, chin in. And then relax the head to the ground. Okay, we're almost there. Roll onto your belly. Face down. We're gonna do an anchor back extension with the big toes touching and the ankles flexed. Big toes together, heels apart, toes off the ground, just a little bit. Knees together, rolling in, heels out. And just like we were doing earlier, we're gonna tuck the tailbone. We're not gonna arch the tailbone and create a big bridge here. We're gonna try to tuck the tailbone as much as possible to protect the lumbar spine from hyperextension. Hands to the side of the ears, forehead on the ground. We're gonna start here with just a few breaths, focusing on the chin tucked in, the toes and knees squeezing together, and the tailbone tuck. When you're ready, take a big breath and just the head lifted up off the ground. This should be fairly easy here, even if the head lifts just a little bit. As long as there's no weight on the ground, we're on the pose. Most importantly, tuck the chin in. Avoid looking forward. Again, that creates hyperextension of the neck, of the cervical spine. So chin in, back of the neck and long. This might be plenty. We're using the tuck and or the pin, depending where you're feeling it, to protect the spine. If you start to feel a lot of pinching on the lower section, it probably means you need more of a tuck. But if the pinning is on the upper middle section, or more of like the kind of connection between the lumbar spine and the thoracic, then we need a bit more pinning. Back of the neck is long. Now, if it's possible and accessible, then ideally our hands and elbows would also come off the ground. If that's not accessible, you just keep the hands and elbows on the ground. So whatever you can do, just make sure you're breathing deeply, you're not locking the breath, the back of the neck is long. And we're just going for a long hold here, but if you need to come out, you just come out and rest. How about 1 or 2 more breaths here? And we're gonna finish by hands coming to the floor. Press yourself back towards your knees, and either knees together or knees wide apart. Child pose, hips go towards the heels. Tuck the chin in, forehead or top of the head on the ground. Hands straight forward. Breathe here. Sending the breath to the low back, to the mid back, to the back of the neck. Big breaths here, heavy hips, heavy torso, heavy arms, heavy hands, heavy head. Walk your hands towards the right side to get a bit more stretch on the left side, all the way from the low back, mid back, lats, shoulder rotators. And again, try to get heavy, but breathe deeply. And back to center. And left side. Big breaths here. And back to center. Maybe 1 or 2 more breaths in this position. And let's come up to seated. We almost forgot to do one more exercise for our feet. So come back to seated. Again, with legs straight forward. Maybe the knees are bent, or maybe they're straight on the ground. Your choice. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna flex the ankles, toes pointing towards the knees. And first, focus on your hands, focus on your palms, and notice the difference between what I call cupping, where we engage the palm muscles, versus gripping, where we engage the finger muscles, right? And all this is coming from our forearm. That's where the muscles are, right? So we're gonna cup muscles of the palms and then grip muscles of the fingers, okay? Now let's try to translate that to our feet. We're going to cup muscles of the arches of the feet and then grip muscles of the lower legs. So grip and grip, cup and cup, or cup and hold, 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 release, grip and grip. Let's go ahead and cup and then grip at the same time. Notice what that feels like. Cup and grip, cup and grip, cup and grip, cup and grip, cup and grip. Feel that around your lower leg muscles, and then spread the toes, spread the arches of the feet. Cup, grip, stretch the toes, stretch the arches. Just keep going with that. Cup, grip. If it helps, you could do hands and feet at the same time, just to get a sense of understanding how much more potential movement and strength we have on the feet, right? But we don't really focus on our feet that often, so we lost a lot of our motion potential. So, a couple more of those. Inhale to spread, and exhale to grip. How about the last one here? Good. All right.